Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello, good Monday morning. My name is Nick Reed, broadcasting live from in studio because it's Monday, and that's what we do on Monday. Tomorrow, of course, is election day. We have sample ballots. Sponsored by Brad Pistole, host of Safe Money Radio at KSGF.com. Today, we have got a number of different folks we're going to talk with. They've been pretty guest heavy as we lead into the election. We had interviews with a few of the candidates for a couple of the races. If you go to the election section, you can find those there. When it comes to state senate, Curtis Trent, Lori Rook, and then one of the more local state rep races. It's a little more high profile than some of the others, and that is Angela Romine challenging Jamie Gregg, who's running for re-election in the primary there. And so, that's what we've got. Now, of course, so many of you questioning particularly 4 and 5, and, there's so many different ads out there. When it really comes down to it, you can't make a decision based off of flyers and ads. I mean, just in my opinion. When it comes to either of those particular amendments, because they are, to me, very detailed, that there is a tremendous amount of nuance, a tremendous amount of layers. It's one of the reasons Amendment 5 in particular, the folks who have put that together have been traveling around the state, holding all these town hall meetings, just imploring people who are skeptics to come and ask them questions, pick apart the amendment, the things that you've heard. And I'm sure it'll come as no surprise that virtually every one of the town hall meetings are hearing the exact same sort of questions over and over again. And that's because of claims and information that are on the internet and just in everyday conversations. But point being is, when you have issues that are as layered as Amendment 5 and Amendment 4, the idea that you are going to be able to successfully inform an individual voter with enough information, either side of it, in some sort of mailer that comes in the mail, or a TV commercial, or a radio ad for that matter. And Lord knows, I mean, we have plenty of those ads. And that's not an argument that the ads shouldn't be placed. Hey, listen, this is the way our society works, and in terms of information, that is for, be it television or flyers you get in the mail or radio, that is the limitation put on that sort of messaging. So that's just the reality of it. It isn't a bad thing. I think that the upside of it is it raises awareness. Most of you know that there is an Amendment 4 and Amendment 5. Why? Because of all those ads. And so they're almost like appetizers is the way I look at them. If you go to the food court and, sometimes you've got, it's usually one of the Chinese or Asian restaurants, they'll be standing out there giving you a sample, and you may be like, oh, that tastes good. I kind of like that. But does that really tell you what a full meal's like? Are you going to be able to give someone a full review of the restaurant and the food court based off of that one little sample? No. But it raises awareness for you. So I think that's a great purpose that they serve, but you can't from that draw, because there's just not enough information, a really fully informed opinion based off of that. That's my opinion on it. And that usually works against people who are supportive of legislation or amendments. The more complicated it is, because the more complicated it is, the easier it is to, if one just wants to throw a claim against it and say, well, it's going to do this thing, that can scare people. And then in order to understand why perhaps the claim isn't true, takes a great deal of dedication and thinking and understanding. And frankly, for a lot of people, either don't have the wherewithal or just the time. They play better safe than sorry. Like, well, I don't really know if the claim's true or not, but if it is, so it's just best to vote this way, just in case. All that being said, we have had numerous discussions and regarding specifically Amendment 4 and 5 with oftentimes the people that are responsible for it. Are those, by the way, I know we talk about in the election section, Sarah, that we've got the candidate interviews, but are those
Yes.
breakdown? Okay.
Yes, they are.
So that is a great place as well for you to get information about Amendment 4 and probably 5 more so, I would imagine. Is that accurate? Or is it pretty even, Stephen, on that? Okay. Now, I will say this. When you go there, you are going to hear the pro side of it. But I would argue this. The pro side of those amendments, particularly Amendment 5, that have come on the program are there not necessarily to rally, but to educate. And I know that may seem like, oh well, that's a nice way to put it. If you support it, of course, it's education. It's not just a propaganda. But those individuals, I know Bishop Davidson, one of them, when he came in studio to talk about it, he's like, please have people send in questions. We want to answer questions. We want people to understand this. To me, that's always a really good sign about any piece of legislation or an amendment, when the people who put it together want people to ask questions. They want skeptics to come to them with things that they've heard so that they can talk about them. Doesn't mean you have to support it. I just think that shows the people behind it really do want you to know everything about it. I think it's fair to say, if you are not fully informed on that stuff and you listen to some of the people who put it together, you will hear solid factual information that you weren't aware of. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to cause you to side with them. Today, we are actually coming up after 6:30. Last week, we talked with someone. This is sort of just to give you an idea of the lineup today. We had a Springfield flock camera individual who is raising awareness regarding flock cameras in Springfield. We're going to have a gal on this morning after 6:30 regarding Willard. As numerous communities in the area or citizens in the communities are increasingly pushing back on this. And I think that Bolivar has inspired some folks, because Bolivar residents went to their council, and their council got like a $54,000 grant for these. And after they were, the council, faced with residents saying they were unhappy about this, they voted, let's get rid of this. And that means paying back the 54 grand, so be it. And I think that has been inspirational for a lot of citizens, believing that, hey, if you have a council, or at least some on your local council, that really does truly believe in being a representation of the people in their district, then it is possible for the people to actually be in charge of what goes on in the city. So we're going to have a gal from Willard on to talk about the efforts there. Dr. John Lilly is going to be on in the 7 o'clock hour. He was originally scheduled to fill in for me one day, and then some things got changed around, and he was going to talk about specifically Amendment 5, and so he didn't have an opportunity to present his thoughts on it. He will be with us in the 7 o'clock hour. And then the 8 o'clock hour, Mike Moon, who is one of, or the most constitutionally voting member of the state Senate. He is opposed to 4 and 5, and so he will come in and explain his reasons for that in the 8 o'clock hour. So that's a bit of a lineup today. I know somewhat off kilter from our standard programming in terms of being heavy with people, but as we get into the election, it's just, I think, appropriate. But we'll cover a few other things as well that have been going on over the weekend. Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 89. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 68. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 93 and heat index values as high as 96. And for Wednesday, sunny with a high near 94.
You, Sarah, on Saturday, you did some candidate interviews as well that are
Yes.
in the election section.
Missouri State Senate District 28, which that is the northern part of our listening area, which it covers 9 different counties. So if you're specifically in Dallas and Polk County, I know that our reach is there. So I do recommend that you go take a listen to those if you're out there looking for candidate interviews for that race.
I did want to just play a couple bits of audio of RFK Jr. on the Dana Bash over the weekend, and it's making the rounds because it was quite confrontational. And the big takeaway, frankly, is the media just, it is crazy. When Fauci is exposed, his diary is exposed, we know because of his own writings that he was lying about so much. He was being completely dishonest. Yet the media still touts him as an expert. And still, they pretend as if that we are in the peak of Fauci being considered infallible and unquestionable, and completely live in a world in which all of the information that we have subsequently learned about Fauci, because of not just his diary, but email exposure and so forth, in which he's pressuring scientists in exchange for getting grants or not having their grants cut off to, come out against the lab leak theory. All of these strong arm tactics that are unethical and, in some of the things writing about, even illegal. Yet the media is still like none of it ever happened. Here is an exchange between RFK Jr. and Dana Bash on scaring people during COVID.
I want to talk about.
Cite me the study that you're talking about.
I am here
You've
to
seen
defend-
studies. Cite me the study.
This is not productive. I am not here to defend all of the.
You're talking nonsense. You're making assertions you can't support it, and then when I pull you on them, you're telling me I'm arguing.
Okay, do you want to talk about assertions that you can't support? I'll get there in a second. Let me just say, for the record, that I am not saying that the entire way that the COVID reaction was accurate. It was a scary time, and people made mistakes. Absolutely.
You were scaring people.
Why are you saying that?
Because that was the job of CNN.
Okay.
Was to put the pylons up about how many people are
We were trying to we were listening to the leaders in this country, including the president, who had a daily press conference explaining what was going on and trying to listen.
Were you listening?
I want to talk to measles.
Actually, were you reading
the measles?
All right, so a couple of tactics come to light here, and one of them is, and he noted this, that every time he would talk, see, she talks about experts, he talks about facts, he talks about studies, he talks about information. And what he notes here, and you hear it consistently through the interview, this is a tactic, and I don't think it's a deliberate tactic as much as just a default tactic. She makes claims about, alluding that he doesn't have information to back up what he's saying. Then when he starts providing the information, she complains that he's arguing, that this isn't productive, you're just here to argue. And he notes that. You keep asking me for facts, I give them to you, you shut me down, accusing me of arguing with you. This preposterous notion that, you can hear it. Why would you say we were scaring people? Are you kidding me? Rolling death counts as if it was a Jerry Lewis, as if it was a Jerry Lewis telethon. I mean, it almost became a macabre running joke that the media across the bottom, it was like a fundraiser. And when are we going to hit this amount? As they were just rolling the death count. Florida. I mean, these are people who claimed you would kill your grandma if you did not get vaccinated. And when RFK Jr. notes that you were out there scaring people, why would you say that? We were just putting up the experts. We were just putting up the experts. And the point RFK Jr. was making on numerous occasions, and it's so true. He said, have you even, these studies, do you even know what you're talking about? No, you don't. You just bring in people who you have deemed to be experts, and you just repeat what they say. That's not journalism. That's what a spokesperson does. That's what the White House press secretary does. Whatever the White House's message is, whatever the president's message is, that is what the White House press secretary does. They get out there and they spread the message of the executive branch. That is what any spokesperson for a school district does, or a spokesperson for a company, a corporation. It is so telling that without realizing what a rebuke of journalism their defense is, that they are admitting they're being spokespersons for Fauci and for those that repeat his lines by openly saying we don't need to know the facts. We just bring on the experts and then we just tell you what they say. Well, why are you even needed then? Outside of simply becoming spokespersons for the left, what is your job? Springfield's Talk 1041, the Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Brookline Door Works, all of your garage door needs. Maintenance is very important for a garage door. Have you ever even had yours checked? I'll be honest with you, I never, until the last few years, concerned myself with garage door maintenance. I think particularly as a kid, you grow up and you just aren't even aware of these things. And so it's not top of mind. You don't know that that is something you need to keep on top of. You don't have to, but odds are if you do, and you do annual maintenance like I do, which isn't that big of a deal really in terms of labor, you in all likelihood will extend the life of your garage. And that is something that is a real value. And you may prevent the unexpected spring break, get them replaced beforehand. And while either which way it's going to cost you to replace that spring, whether it's after it's broken or before it's broken, the before it's broken prevents you from being stuck in or out of your garage because of a broken spring. If it squeaks, if it pops, if you haven't done it in a year, I recommend Brookline Door Works. Have them swing by, do a check for you. And then if you do find yourself in an emergency situation, 24/7 service. BrooklineDoorWorks.com, also under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. I wanted to play another back and forth RFK Jr. on with Dana Bash of CNN regarding the issue of, quote, experts. And by the way, now you don't see the visuals, but every time RFK Jr. says the word experts, he's doing air quotes.
You are the HHS secretary, and you are talking about things that lead to vaccine hesitancy in this country. And it is something that causes problems for people when there is not anything.
Let me ask you something. Do you see your job as ending vaccine hesitancy, or do you see your job as telling the truth to the American people?
I see my job as telling the truth, and the truth is that there is study after study after study. It's one of the most studied things out there in science.
You're repeating
and it is
like a parrot. You're repeating it like a parrot. I've actually read the science. Let's come back here and debate the science.
I'm not debating this with you.
Of course you won't.
Because I'm not
all
debating.
All you know how to do is repeat things that people told you and say, trust the experts. That's what you did during COVID. Now we know that Anthony Fauci, who was the expert, was lying about everything, about masks, about social distancing, about natural immunity, about the transmission from the vaccine, about the source of COVID. He was lying, and you were punishing people for not trusting the experts. And now you're rolling out the experts again to talk about something that you have no personal knowledge of.
Okay, well, guess what? That is my job, to talk to people.
Your job is to
tell
the truth to the American people.
Yes, and my job is to get as much information as I can. And what we were doing
skepticism,
what we were doing in COVID and still, with regard to these vaccines, is getting the best information, the best science that we can, and putting it out there. And sir, what you are doing is causing information to be out there that is not accurate.
Who was lying to you?
I will say, I'm not overly comfortable with the argument, though I understand the concept of RFK Jr. He's making that your job is to tell the truth. Because the problem is they think that they are. I believe their job is to essentially be a cameraman, if you will, that is capturing what's going on and then showing it to you. What they should have been doing, instead of, as RFK Jr. noted here, banning and censoring some people and just picking, we're going to listen to this side and this side only, they should have been presenting experts and scientists and people from all across the board. Here's what these people say, here's what these people say. And then let the people decide. But in their minds, they know what the truth is, and so their job is to lead you to it. I think a very valuable question to ask as they take cover, the media takes cover for their negligence or their hand in responsibility in this, by hiding behind the, quote, experts. Oh, no, we're just listening to the experts. This isn't our fault. I mean, we were just reporting what the experts said. I'd like to have them answer the question, how do you determine what makes an expert? How do you determine that? To me, it isn't a resume. It isn't affluence. It isn't how many degrees you have. It's what is your track record of being more accurate than the average person in your field when it comes to discussing these matters. That's an expert to me. If you are, if you're in the world of sports analysis and you have a group of people and the people, they all sit around and they make predictions about teams in the upcoming season, and then you got a pool of people that are really bad at it. You have the vast majority that are pretty much in line, but then there's about a 1% that above and beyond all the rest somehow manage to have enough insight and wisdom in order to have a higher level of accuracy when it comes to predictions. Those are the people that should be the experts. The problem with the media is that is irrelevant to them when it comes to those that they deem to be experts. Doesn't matter how often they're wrong. Look at the experts they have when it comes to the economy. I mean, all through the Obama years, the experts were wrong. The experts, underestimated. The experts overestimated. And it's almost consistently that way to this day, but they continue to bring those exact same people on. Same thing with Fauci and when it comes to those of COVID. It is irrelevant to them how often they're wrong, or if we've learned by their own emails and their little journal entries that they've been lying to us. That's not an expert. That's quite the opposite. And I think that it would be beneficial for these outlets that continue to put forth these people that are wrong on a level that is, greater than the average person in this country, oftentimes it seems. And ask them, how is it you determine what makes an expert? Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 89. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 68. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 93 and heat index values as high as 96. And for Wednesday, sunny with a high near 94.
Flock cameras getting increased amount of attention. We had last week, I believe it was, I guess you'd say an actor. This is a citizen in studio that has been working with a number of others in order to bring attention to
Flockout Springfield.
Flockout Springfield, and that's the site, right? Is it Flockout Springfield or Flockout SGF.com? I'm guessing.
I believe so.
And a lot of folks got a lot of feedback from you. What can we do? And go to that site. There's information on that. And they also, I need to print it off because I think it's in a few weeks. They have a public event that is open to the public.
Okay.
Yeah, he said there would be free pizza there.
I'm in.
He sent me the flyer. It's a couple weeks away, so we'll make.
And I'll put it in the community calendar.
Perfect. And before he came on, I had gotten an email from Hallie in Willard, and she was talking about flock cameras there and asking about spreading the word about, potentially do something about that. And she joins us in studio. How are you?
I'm good.
And, well, of course, my pleasure. I appreciate you reaching out. All right, so what's going on in Willard?
Yeah, so Willard has 19 cameras currently. They signed their contract towards the end of July last year, and then cameras started popping up
Okay.
following that towards the end of last year. And I know there have been a couple of citizens who have been trying to find out what transpired that led
Sure.
those to be. And eventually, I sent an email to my aldermen just to let them know my concerns. And the response I got back from that was, if you've got a problem, go to a meeting. And so now here we are. It's definitely really taken off. I've talked to a lot of residents from all sorts of political spectrums who are really, really concerned about these. So the email that I sent was towards the beginning of the summer. So we've really it's been moving quickly.
Did you find out the origins of how they came about? How did that happen
Yeah.
for Willard?
So Willard's flock cameras are funded by a $50,000 Missouri Blue Shield grant program. And to that point, I was listening on the way in this morning talking about ballot measures, which I want to talk about that because originally, from my conversations with the police department, it seems that one of our ballot measures was hoping to pay for these cameras.
Oh, okay.
And then the grant came around and we used the grant to pay for them.
Okay.
So, yes, the cameras in Willard are paid for by this grant. But in April of 2025, you may remember Willard had a public safety tax proposed, and that did pass with, I think it was 397 for and like 200 against. So not very many votes on it, but it did pass because it was championing increased officer salaries, which Willard is woefully behind, so definitely a need. And then facility upgrades and technology upgrades. Flock was never mentioned in that, but the police department does believe because that ballot measure passed that folks would be, in general, in support of Flock, which I disagree with that stance
Right.
since it was never, mentioned.
Right.
So that's kind of how these cameras came to be in Willard.
So are you finding, the way it sounds across the political spectrum, that there are folks that are at the very least uneasy about this in Willard?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, historically speaking, conservatives have always said, we don't want the government having us in the
Right.
database. Like, we don't want them to know who has guns and so forth. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have liberals who don't want private companies collecting data on us. And so I don't want to say it's the best of both worlds. I'll
Right.
say it's the worst of both worlds. Flock has embodied that. And so we have people from both aisles who have a lot of concerns about the data that's collected and how it's handled.
I talked about this on air, communication from a listener noting that they had gone to an event in which some law enforcement was there, and they were talking about the flock cameras, and this person had noted that the law enforcement was there. They were supportive of it, and that this person felt that some of the stuff were, quote, I don't want to say scare tactics, but unnecessary fears, although he said there were still a lot of areas of concern. And, it's interesting because law enforcement, I just want to get your thoughts on this. Law enforcement oftentimes is there as the voice that is supportive of this. And so that carries a lot of weight. But they, I find, are coming from a position of, is this a tool that will help us expedite certain aspects of our job? They're not looking at it from a constitutional perspective, and that's what some of us are looking at it. So you've got I equated it to doctors who said government should force people to get vaccines. Well, okay, they're doctors, and that is their area of expertise, and they may be some of the most brilliant doctors in the world, but that doesn't mean that their perspective is from my liberty and my freedom perspective. And I think that sometimes that can get a little foggy for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I have spoken with anyone who will deny that the flock cameras are useful. I mean, of
Right.
course they are useful. Willard is logging 70,000 vehicles per month through 19 cameras. You can very easily find your bad guy if you get on there. They're very useful, but there are a lot of other things that could be useful too that we don't do because of serious concerns. We don't have, no one is chipped. We don't read people's mail. You have to have a warrant to get cell phone data. There are a lot of things that can be useful, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's something we should be doing. And so that's why we've been trying to be clear about there are, and I've heard this a lot in the community, we have people who are seriously concerned with that aspect, with the rights. But, Flock also has a number of things to be concerned about that are concrete, too, that we've been hoping could be more of a persuasive tool to people who are very
What are
pro
some of those things?
So, for instance, our contract, the terms and conditions for Flock has been changed across 2 contract iterations, which are 210 changes based on the 2 change reports. The police department did seem surprised by that. The Board of Aldermen have not given me a solid answer on whether they were aware of this or not, but that does seem to have been done surreptitiously, which is a concern. We have concerns about the cost. Willard is getting ready to undergo a rate study for utilities, for water and sewer. So, we need to be thinking about the city budget if we're going to be paying for these cameras as opposed to things that critical infrastructure in Willard. So those are some concrete things that we've been concerned about. I'm sure, there are people concerned about misuse of it as well, the lack of oversight. For example, I did submit a FOIA request for our audit logs, but you can go online and see most of them for free and mostly unredacted because they're already out there as a result of how Flock shares and receives data.
We're talking with Willard resident Hallie regarding Flock cameras. Bolivar, I'm sure you followed what has gone on there, and at least the way that it's been reported, they got a grant also, I think $54,000 for Flock cameras, and then citizens in Bolivar, like yourself and Willard, are like, we have a problem with this, and the council there, apparently, they just unanimously, they're like, yeah, we're going to figure out how to get out of this contract, even if that means paying back the $54,000. I think that's surprising to a lot of people, particularly people who live in Springfield, in which the council's responsiveness is the opposite of that. And has that been an encouragement for you all in Willard?
Yeah, absolutely. Once we saw the news come out of Bolivar last week, I definitely saw a lot of people rally behind that. The art of war, when they say the best way to get someone to concede is to convince them. And I feel like I'm seeing a lot of that with Flock with, they're already up there. You already have cell phones. Like, just get over it. Don't worry about it. And so I was encouraged too, and a lot of people, to see that come out of Bolivar because I think it reinforces that, yes, you can do something about it. You can help change this, but you've got to get out and speak up.
We have Hallie from Willard with us. We're going to get a traffic update, excuse me, and then just any final thoughts, or if people are in the Willard area, and they are just hearing about this for the first time and want to know what it is they can do to help and get involved, we'll get that information as well. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Hallie in studio with us from Willard regarding the issue of flock cameras. There was a text that had come in saying, why don't you get a parent of a child that was abducted and a child found because of flock? And I don't know if I'm sure situations like that exist. Amber Alerts seem to be pretty effective. But here is what I would say to that. You could then argue that every home should have cameras in them, and that would prevent child abuse or spousal abuse. I mean, why not? I mean, we're being monitored anyway. Alexa can listen to us, our cell phones, and if that saves somebody from being a victim of spousal abuse, then how can you be against that? It's the same argument. I mean, this is it's long been said, though I'm not going to get it exactly right. Those who are willing to sacrifice freedom and liberty for the promise of temporary security deserve neither safety or liberty. And it's true. You've got to pick one or the other. And, that's my assessment anyhow. So people that are in Willard and that do have concerns about this, is there a Facebook page? What can they do?
Yeah. And prior to, I will answer that, but who does not want to find missing kids? In 2017, prior to the widespread use of flock, there were 195 Amber Alerts, 193 were recovered. Yeah. We have tools to do this. But yes, we don't have it. This is just citizens getting together. So we don't have anything concrete, but we do have an email. If someone wants to get connected, it's dflockwillard@gmail.com. Okay. Send me an email and we'll get you connected. We've been working on a report to present to the board. We'd like to have that for public view soon. We'd like the board to be able to see it first, as a courtesy to them. But yeah, send us an email and we'll get you hooked up.
Do you have a sense from anybody on the council, or has it even gotten to that point where some are like, yeah, there seems to be something here in terms of your concern, or is that still unknown?
In the initial vote, there was one nay, and she remains a nay. Now, as far as the rest of the board, I couldn't tell you definitively how they are, what they're thinking. We've been having residents from their respective wards contact their own aldermen, so that way I'm not in the mix with everybody.
Sure.
But we definitely have rallied a lot of awareness, and so I think they are hearing that from the community.
Well, keep us updated if you would. And as you had mentioned off air, this was not, you are not, I guess, an activist. This is not something that you really had planned on doing, but like a lot of causes, this is how you know things are organic, and this is what we're seeing with a lot of these concerns and people gathering together regarding flock cameras. That they're not generally activist people that are out there looking for the next thing to promote or be against, but they are just traditionally people like, this is the first time I've ever done anything like this, and that is the true definition of grassroots. And if you would just keep us in the loop on this, we would appreciate it greatly, so we can make sure people know what's going on in Willard.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, you bet, Hallie. Thank you so very much. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Regarding flock cameras, I want to sort of reiterate and a couple of follow-up texts on the Pyramid Roofing Company text line saying, why don't you get a parent of a child that was abducted and found because of flock, or a victim of a serial burglary who were caught because of flock? You are on the wrong side of this. And as Hallie noted, of the 156 abductions in Missouri over a period of time, 154, I think, or I may be off on the numbers, but it was only all but 2 successfully were found by Amber Alerts. And these are emotionally very compelling arguments. And I know I mentioned it earlier, but again, if that is how we're going to decide what tools government can have, then every home should have live streaming videos in them that law enforcement have access to. The vast majority of child abuse occurs in a home. The vast majority of domestic abuse occurs in the home. Now, some will say, well, yeah, but you can't do that because Fourth Amendment. Well, why don't you ask the family of a spouse that lost their life because of habitual spousal abuse, or ask a child who grew up in a home of abuse? And so that is a tactic that is. And I don't even want to use the word tactic, because I think genuine people can think along those lines. And that's where we choose. And as a country, this is what differentiated us from the rest. We chose freedom and liberty over government being the constant surveillance state that was privy to any and everything they wanted to be privy to regarding our lives, all in the name of our security and safety. And that's why it was stated by the founders. You got to choose one or the other. I would also note that the problem with crime in this country overall isn't the lack of ability to catch criminals. It is that we have a justice system that has turned into this revolving door in which criminals know getting caught's irrelevant. When we're talking about the issue of crime overall, I shared this story, and I'll share it again without going into too many details. Someone that I know that was at his home, and there were nefarious individuals for a number of reasons that were driving by their house, and they pulled out a firearm and pointed it at them as they drove by. So law enforcement was called, and while law enforcement was there, that vehicle, and I think another one, drove back by, presumably in order to finish the job. Law enforcement took chase, captured the individual. Or I don't even know if they had to chase him or they captured him right there. And they told this family that were the victims of the situation that before they came back by, because of flock cameras, they already had a make and a model and had a sense of who they were. After an hour and a half sitting, or an hour or so, sitting in the back of the squad car, the individual that pointed the firearm at this family, he was let go. And they were told, well, technically there wasn't anything he did, that this and that and so forth. And, I'm sure that decision by law enforcement was a reflection of the overall judicial system. Point being is, having tools that make it easier to catch criminals are irrelevant when it comes to the overall issue of safety and crime in this country or this community if criminals aren't concerned about being captured, because they know they'll just be back out on the street in short order. So for that reason, aside from freedom and liberty and privacy, I don't see them as a valuable tool in altering our criminal landscape, making it safer overall. Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome to the show, everyone. My name is Nick Reed. It is Monday. Oh, I do want to mention this because it is the first Friday of the month. Our happy hour is actually going to be the 14th. It will be next Friday, not this Friday. So you can mark that on your calendar. Also, want to remind you that this is more of a personal thing. For you, Ozarks Elder Law, when it comes to wills, when it comes to trust, there are a lot of offerings on social media and on television. You used to hear them on radio a bit. I haven't for some time, but I've noticed a lot on television where it is essentially do it yourself or do it online. You pay just a couple $100. Why pay $1,000 when you could pay $200 or $300 in order to have the same thing done? Well, it's being done by attorneys when you do it correctly. And Ozarks Elder Law, this is what they do. This is what they focus on. And the term elder is in there because of the tremendous amount of work that is done regarding people in the elderly years and a lot of the legal implications with that. But once you turn 18 years old, you are an adult. You are autonomous. And unless you have stuff like power of attorney, be it for medical purposes or financial purposes spelled out in legal documents, you are on your own and at the mercy of people that aren't your family. People in Missouri think, oh, well, I'm married, so my wife gets to make those final decisions, or my husband gets to make those final decisions. In fact, that was one of the big arguments against or supportive of gay marriage, that that then gives them the final say. But in Missouri, if you don't have the legal documentation, I know because my own mother went through this with Ozarks Elder Law, that you give to your doctor, the hospital, saying, no, final decision is up to this person, then you may find yourself unfortunately surprised. And so what do you need to do? This is what they'll tell you. The consultation's a courtesy. It's customized to you. So this isn't just some sort of bullet point, oh, you need a will, you need a trust. It's customized to your personal situation. And then they'll tell you what it costs to have it done, all legally wrapped up. You decide if you want to do it or not. OzarksElderLaw.com. We are going to be talking with Dr. John Lilly coming up. It's really funny because yesterday I got a text from a friend wondering, like, what Tom Martz, what Dr. Lilly, what these people think about it. I was like, well, in fact, Dr. Lilly is going to be on tomorrow in the 7 o'clock hour talking about some of this. And so we will get his thoughts on it. Mike Moon will be here in the 8 o'clock hour to give his perspective on it as well. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 89. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 68. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 93 and heat index values as high as 96. And for Wednesday, sunny with a high near 94.
Our good friend Dr. John Lilly in the studio with us, and gosh, it's been since, I guess, the end of last year, at least, since I've chatted with you, because you retired your slot at the end of last year, and it's great to have you back in.
Well, thanks.
And
good to be back.
Yeah, and so, well, of course, your insight's always valuable. Some of this stuff you were going to cover, you were originally scheduled to fill in, but some things got switched around, and so wanted to have you come in today and talk about some of the amendments just to give some additional perspective. And for those listening, again, we've got the election section, sample ballot, sponsored by Brad Pistole, host of Safe Money Radio, and there are also up there some candidate interviews and then segments with people like Darren Chappell and Bishop Davidson regarding these amendments as well. And so you're actually also going to hit on 1 and 2, which a lot of people are like, oh, wait, there's a 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Before we get into the 4 and 5. So have at it.
Okay. Amendment 1 is to continue the state park sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
It's only 0.1%. And it was started, I think it was 20 years ago, so it's gone through one. And they put in there every 10 years, you got to redo the thing.
Because it was sold as sunsetting, right?
Because it was sold
This
as
is only temporary.
This is only temporary. It's going to sunset.
Until we tell you that we need it again, otherwise all these bad things will happen.
Yes. And they always say when it comes back, oh, this isn't a tax increase.
Right.
Well, yes, it is, because it would go away if we did nothing.
Yeah.
So
I've told some lawmakers this. I think that they should change state statute to say if a tax increase is sold to the American people as temporary, or to the Missourians as temporary, that there has to be an at least 1 year gap between it expiring before you can ask again.
that's a great idea.
I think that way they can't hide behind this. Well, it's not a tax increase. That it legitimately has to be temporary.
Yes.
And then if you want to come back a year or two later, and then that's fine, but you have to let it expire. Anyhow.
And again, this is going to a government bureaucracy. So the General Assembly has no control over what they do with this. I remember years ago when Eric Burleson was, I think he was still a representative, and the Missouri Department of Transportation is the same way. They get their tax and they can spend it however they want, and the General Assembly has no control over it. And he said, but we do have control over their administrative budget, so we can cut that so they got fewer people to do this with. He said that's the one thing we do have control over.
Which tells you how screwy things have become, that the people who are supposed to ultimately be representing us and controlling that stuff have to find these sort of trick ways in order to control bureaucracy.
Yes.
Anyhow.
So this back when it was started was a 10-year tax. 10 years has gone by at least twice, I think. So this is one vote no on it. Just get rid of the thing.
Make it temporary.
Make it temporary again. They've had it for 20-some years at least. So vote no on Amendment 1. Amendment 2 just pertains to Jackson County. Apparently Jackson County, their assessor is not elected. It's some appointed position. And there was 1 year where the assessor increased the assessed value of everything in Jackson County by 900%. And there were some people that, lost
in the
their
last
homes.
few years.
It was fairly recent.
Yeah, I remember this occurring.
And it was just devastating to a lot of people. And there's, when the person's appointed,
Right.
you can't get rid of them.
Right.
So that's a definite 4. Vote for Amendment 2, because it will change it to be like every other county where it has an elected assessor. So those are the two quickies on 1 and 2. Against number 1 and 4 number 2. Now we get to the good ones. 4 is IP reform, the initiative petition reform. And we have been, back when I was with the Missouri Republican Assembly, we'd go up there and sit down with the leadership, and every time we were with, oh yeah, IP reform is top on our list, and we're going to get to that this year. And they never did. It'd come to the end of the session, and one side or the other would get mad about something, and they'd start a filibuster.
Right, yeah.
And they'd just kill the last week of the session. Hardly anything would get done. And so even this was 3 or 4 years ago, Cindy O'Laughlin was the number 2 in the Senate. And she said, yeah, we really like a concurrent majority, and we're going to push that this year. Well, nothing happened. And that's what we really wanted, was a concurrent majority, which is concurrent to majorities. You have to have a majority of the statewide vote, the overall vote, and you have to have a majority of some smaller political subdivision. And it ended up, when it did make it to a bill or a joint resolution, and they were using congressional districts because when those are formed, they have to be, all of them, the same size. And, there's usually 1 or 2 that have 1 extra person. But that is harder to get rid of it through the courts because of 1 person, 1 vote. Other things like House representative districts, Senate representative, they can be widely different in number of the population from the lowest to the highest. So they can come in and say, well, it's not 1 person, 1 vote. But congressional districts, it's got to be as close to exactly even as possible. So we were okay with that. If that had been in place 2 years ago when we voted on the abortion Amendment 3, the abortion Amendment 3 would not have passed. It is just ridiculous.
Well, there are a lot of recent amendments that have passed that have been damaging under the current system. The dictation to private businesses of earned PTO for employees, and the minimum wage hike that occurred. The Medicaid expansion. That's been, for all of the complaining, rightfully so, of the massive explosion in spending. That's a massive part of it, was that. And I didn't even think of that until I was asking Curtis Trent. I was like, why? What is the deal with this? And I forget the exact numbers on it, but it ultimately, the massive part of it was because of that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I saw somebody complaining about how Medicaid was this year in Missouri cutting certain services. I'm like, well, when you expand it to, yeah, that's what's going to happen. But anyhow, so there have been numerous, it seems as if under the current system, not that this should be the determining factor for people, all of the amendments that continue to be put on the Constitution, they certainly aren't conservative. They're left wing.
No. Medical marijuana was one that got on. If you go back far enough, the human cloning back in 2006, that got on because of an initiative petition.
And I would note, aside from the right or wrong on the issue itself, whether it's good or not good for Missouri, these things don't belong in the Constitution anyhow.
Right.
These should be legislative efforts, not constitutional efforts. But the reason that they're going this route is because it's easier.
Yes, and once you get it in the Constitution, it's harder to get rid of.
Yeah.
The legislature can't get rid of it. So where did this thing come from? As far back as I could go was the 1875 Constitution. And in it was Article 4, Section 1A. And it says, the first power reserved by the people is the initiative, and not more than 8% of the legal voters in each of at least 2/3 of the congressional districts in the state shall be required to propose any measure by such petition. Do you know how hard it would have been back then to get 8% in 2/3 of the congressional districts?
A little more difficult.
And all they had was horses. There was no internet. There wasn't even telegraph.
Yeah, so just the ease of travel and communication has lowered the bar
Absolutely.
from the original intent. And you've actually, I remember you noting this a couple of years ago because I had not thought of that. And the characterization that this is, quote, making it harder, actually, this gets it more in line with the way it originally was in terms of effort required.
Right. It should be as hard today as it was in 1875 when it was first in the Constitution. It has become way easier. If you have enough money, you can get the signatures. Then all you have to get is a majority, and the last Amendment 3 passed in St. Louis, Kansas City, and Columbia. And that's all it took.
Yeah. The positioning of it right now, and it's very effective positioning, is that, well, one area can override, can essentially prevent an amendment being added to the Constitution. And that's true if this passes. The way it is now, one area can override everyone who's against it and put it on the Constitution. So the question is, do we want the Constitution to be something in terms of altering it, adding to it, that can be prevented by one area of the state or be altered because of one area of the state? Now, I don't think that the Constitution, I think that the hurdle should be relatively high. And so if it comes to, okay, are we going to allow one area to veto or one area to ultimately override everyone and decide the Constitution, I'd rather that be the power of the veto because it shouldn't be easy. But
Yes.
yeah, and that's my position on it.
Another way to pass this kind of legislation, and this was Bishop Davidson's idea, is to make it a majority of the registered voters. If you did that, then the last Amendment 3 in 2024 would have only got 34%. The Medicaid expansion would have only got 15%. Clean Missouri was another terrible, 35%. Medical marijuana, 37%. Minimum wage, 35%. The human cloning, 27%. None of those got a majority. So that's another good way to do it.
We're talking with Dr. John Lilly. So what do you say to those that are, their position is, yeah, definitely the way is messed up. We need IP reform, but this isn't the way to do it. And the area that generally they point to is the fact that it doesn't raise the bar for legislatively proposed constitutional amendments.
Right. One, only 24 states have the initiative petition process in their constitution. So it's a minority of states that are able to do this. 26 states can't do what we do. So it's not like, oh, this is some general human right to alter the Constitution. No, that was put in and voted for. It should be, the Constitution is a foundational document, and it should be very difficult to change. We've changed it a lot. So I can't believe how many times we've changed. And it's when it's this easy to change,
Right.
you get more of the liberals that put money into it and get bad
Well, that's why
stuff in it.
that's why everything that gets added is from the left. One of the other arguments that gets used is, well, if we raise the bar, then it is going to make it impossible to overturn these things. But I don't see when is that happening? Like,
Yeah,
That's not occurring. Where are these efforts to overturn this stuff? And you could even argue how, if it's the same population and the same voting base that voted for it, why would they in turn then turn around and undo it anyhow?
Yeah.
But I'm just not aware of these efforts. I've never seen that occur.
I had thought of that too, and that was initially I was kind of against it.
Right.
Because it's well, crap. Now you can't get the bad stuff out.
Right.
Well, you couldn't.
No one's doing
either.
No one's doing that now. Well, and I think even to the point of you look at, particularly amongst conservatives, what should be a pretty easy haul in terms of a coalition within conservatives is negating, like the abortion one, right? This is a huge one that is utilized as, well, that's bad. That got in under the current system. We need to undo it. Well, there's this massive battle as to whether or not in November that constitutional amendment that is a pro-life one will even pass because of fighting within conservatives over it.
Yes.
And so it's like the current system apparently isn't conducive to, or it at least isn't utilized in order to overturn this stuff.
And the left uses misleading advertising to get the thing passed.
We've got Dr. John Lilly with us. Going to take a quick break, get traffic as well, continue on. Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. All right, more in just a couple of moments with Dr. John Lilly. Amendment 4, we'll get into Amendment 5 as well. I want to note also, I like the fact that when it comes to 4 and 5, and we're going to have Mike Moon in the upcoming hour. He is in opposition to those. And when you have intelligent people that are on the right having differing perspectives of this stuff, you can have discussions about it in a reasonable way. And I think that's a good thing. I know for people, sometimes it could be like, in fact, somebody texted in, they're like, well, Darren Chappell and Mike Moon are on separate ends of this thing. I don't know what to do because these are two people who I really, truly respect. Sometimes very intelligent, well thought out, constitutionally minded people can come to different. I mean, look at the founding of this country. The founders. It wasn't as if they all got together and like, oh well, we got this thing wrapped up. We're all on the same page. I mean, what they went through in order to finally get things rolling in this country. And so I think instead of being really frustrated by it, we should actually look at it as a positive thing, and that we are able, in an effort to try to do the best thing possible, have these conversations regarding whether certain things are the right thing to do or not. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. You know, we're getting a little bit of a break from the extreme heat today, but we're going to creep back up in those 90s Tuesday and Wednesday. And when it's that hot, your AC is running constantly, and that is when breakdowns occur. Now, if your AC is already struggling to keep up, it might be time to reach out to Russell and his team over at Foreman Mechanical. They're very upfront and honest about the work that needs to be done, and they also offer residential and commercial services. And if it is something that, you know, happens after what's considered those normal business hours, maybe it's 6:30 p.m. on a weekday, or maybe it's the weekend, they also offer a 24/7 emergency service line. So whether you need just a simple AC repair or maybe it's time for a brand new unit, reach out to Russell and schedule that appointment today. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com. Fields Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 89. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 68. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 93 and heat index values as high as 96. And for Wednesday, sunny with a high near 94.
Dr. John Lilly with us this morning. Now, did you wrap on 4? Are you ready for 5, or do you have anything else on 4?
No, I'm just about on 4. I kind of went back and forth on that one. I wish it had been a concurrent majority, but I can see that I'd heard Darren Chappell talk, and he said they did some polling, and this was the one that was favored over any of the others.
Okay.
I would rather have what they're proposing over what's existing now, and to keep getting more and more liberal parts into the Constitution.
Yeah. I worry that if this doesn't pass, that we'll never get it, but I could be wrong.
Well, a lot of times in Jeff City, they will propose something, and if it, one way or the other, they say, well, we did our job, and you won't see it for 10 years.
If that.
So I'm a little ticked about that, too. So, on to topic 5. Now, why do we want a sales tax instead of an income tax? Let's look at the rest of the country. I dug up the state annual gross domestic product numbers and took it from 2015 to 2025 and looked at an average. So the states that have a sales tax, Florida, as far as GDP, Florida is number 2 in the nation on average over those 10 years, 7.2%. Nevada is another state with the sales tax. It's number 5, 6.9%. Washington is number 6, 6.7%. Tennessee is number 8, 6.1%. Texas is number 12, 5.8%. New Hampshire is 22nd at 5%. South Dakota is 24th at 5%. Missouri is 33rd at 4.5%. So with our mainly income tax, we're 33rd in the nation. Now, the two down, this also has District of Columbia. The two down at the bottom have sales taxes, but one of them's Alaska, tiny state, population-wise. It's 50th at 2.8, and Wyoming, another tiny state population-wise, is 51 at 2.7. So the majority of states that have a sales tax are kicking our hiney because the income tax is such a poor way to, for the state to get money.
Well, and it is the ultimate. Not all taxation is redistribution of wealth. Like when you look at sales tax, for example, to me, that's not redistribution of wealth because everyone is participating.
Yeah.
You're not taking one group and saying, we're going to take your wealth and use it to benefit all of these people that aren't. That's redistribution. And that's what the income tax is, relying on a minority of people to do the heavy lifting of the taxes. And it's one of the reasons, and I try to be consistent as someone who is against redistribution of wealth, it's one of the reasons that the income tax is a bad tax. And it allows the spenders to put us where they want us, and that's against one another.
Yes.
They know that if we put the burden on a minority of individuals when it comes to an effort in order to distribute it in a way that is more even if the outcome is better for everyone in terms of the overall economy, the majority of people who aren't paying are like, well, why should I have to, pay part of this? And that they'll vote against it. And it's a very effective tool because you see, and I get it. I mean, this is why they do it. A lot of people that are traditionally conservative that may even look at states like Texas and Florida and say, why can't we be like that? But then when it comes to getting there, because they have been part of the group that hasn't been responsible for that tax burden. They're against it, and it's a very difficult thing to overcome.
Yes. I've heard commercials say, well, this is going to increase your sales tax by 30%, some huge number. Now, what you have to realize is the only entity that really pays taxes is the individual person acting as the final consumer on new goods and services. Corporations don't pay taxes. They pass it through in their price. So you still pay their taxes because it's a higher price. They're not going to say, well, I guess we'll lose money this year.
Right.
They don't do that. It's part of their price that they build into their goods and services. And again, you don't see it in the services. In the goods, you go to the grocery store, you get a little register receipt that has sales tax on it. You go to your lawyer, he doesn't say, oh, here's your bill, and this part of it is
Right.
for the sales tax.
It's a hidden tax.
It's a hidden tax. It's an embedded tax, precisely. So that is something that you already pay. So it's not some new tax that's coming along. It's just another way to pay it. And this also talks about when the government shifts from sales tax to and takes away an income tax. It says it reduces the top tax rate. And I thought, well, why is it redoing just the top tax rate? Well, think of it this way. If you had a tax of 1%, 2%, and 3%, and a third of the people paid each one of those, then you start reducing the 3% rate, and when it got down to 2%, now suddenly 2/3 of the population become the top wage earners, and the 2% now becomes the top income tax rate. And when they reduce that down to 1%, now everybody is paying the top rate. So that's why they did it that way, because as it goes down and you get to the next rate bracket, it spreads it out over more people until eventually you get down to where there's nothing. Well, that covers everybody in the state.
Dr. John Lilly with us. Going to get another traffic update, continue on the Amendment 5 discussion. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Dr. John Lilly in studio with us, Amendment 5.
Yes, another thing Amendment 5 does is everybody pays taxes. All of the people that the drug pushers and all, they don't fill out 1040 forms or any kind of state forms for their illegal income, but they do buy things. And with Amendment 5, with a sales tax, they pay taxes. So all the barter economy, all of the things where somebody doesn't pay a tax, with a sales tax, they'll start paying taxes. It equalizes the system. The one thing I wish it had was a prebate. And Darren Chappell introduces a bill every year that same kind of thing, but it has a prebate in it. So all of the minimum stuff that you have to buy for, minimum living, you get a check for that at the start of every month.
It's interesting because a lot of folks in Missouri that have long talked about flat tax, for example, or some form of taxation that makes it more, quote, fair, are pushing against this because they don't currently pay income tax because they don't work, mostly retired folks. And so suddenly they are going to be responsible for part of it. And I understand that. But it's like, well, that makes it more flat. I mean, that's what I think sometimes we think we like an idea of fairness in the tax system until an area that we haven't or we aren't currently participating in. Suddenly, we may have to start, and then we're like, well, maybe not that fair.
Yeah.
And I get the argument, hey, I paid income tax as my, whole, yeah, I know, I understand that. But still, the fact of the matter is that massive financial burden is on less than 2 million Missourians.
Yes. And the one thing that we're losing is our children. They are moving to other states that are more economically sound. When was the last time you had a poor person start a new company? They don't. You need rich people to start new businesses, have new products, new services. That's the way you grow.
People think that when it comes to either business growth or maybe somebody that is deciding where it is they're going to move next and they're a working person, that they don't pay attention to state income tax. I can tell you for a fact that is not true. The number of people that I have known, had conversations with, some just, even family, that was deciding there was going to be a move, different job offers, and it was based on, one of them was a move to Tennessee because they didn't have state income tax. That made the decision. And I think that oftentimes people who aren't in that situation don't really believe that is a deciding factor. It's a deciding factor.
Yes.
It is. We got one last traffic update and then a final segment with Dr. John Lilly on Amendment 5. I'm Nick Reed. All right, a few minutes left. Dr. Lilly this morning.
One of the things that states and cities did years ago that's kind of chintzy, they taxed professional athletes and their state and local income tax when they came and played a game in Kansas City or St. Louis. Come on. That's just a cheesy way of getting a few more bucks, for your coffer. So we've got amendment number 1 is the sales and use tax that goes for the state. What was it? The historic sites and state parks. Vote against that. Number 2 is to change it so that all assessors are elected and not appointed. Vote for that one. Number 4 is the initiative petition process reform. I'm not crazy about it, but it's better than the way it is now. So I'd say vote for that. I kind of went back and forth for a while. But I ended up vote for that. And number 5 is changing from a state income tax to a state sales tax. Definitely vote for that one. It just makes sense, and there's a lot of states that have the sales tax instead of an income tax. They're doing so much better than we are, and all we're doing is hurting ourselves.
Yeah, someone had asked, well, what about people talking about, well, they can just raise sales tax as high as they want. It cannot, this is part of the amendment, go above raising what is already raised. So
Right.
they cannot utilize this in order to get more revenue than is gathered at this point. And, to your point, I don't know what else to do if we know why it is that other states are economic powerhouses, and that is relying on sales tax instead of state income tax. If we're not willing to do that, then okay, but we're never going to not be mediocre economically.
Right.
We will never be a Texas. We'll never be a Florida. We'll never be a Tennessee, because we just have a population that isn't willing to do what is necessary in order to get there. And, it's just the way it is.
Your kids will move to another state.
Texas, Florida, or Tennessee,
Yeah.
which is where so many of them go. Dr. Lilly, thank you. It's always a tremendous pleasure. Appreciate you coming in this morning.
No problem.
And as I mentioned, Mike Moon, he is going to be calling in. We're going to talk with him, his thoughts. He's very, very good at communicating with constituents where he stands on issues. He is opposed to 4 and 5, so we'll get his thoughts on that in the upcoming hour. In the meantime, news in 60 seconds. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome, Hour 3. My name is Nick Reed. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. W. Lou saying after utilizing some well-known landscaping companies and being unsatisfied, I decided to use Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. Absolutely outstanding. Daniel is a real professional. His crew act the same way, always punctual, responsive, and make sure that when his team is done, it is something that he would be proud of to have in his own yard. I will always use the company for any future projects. We had a fair-sized project, and they truly made it easy. My family loves it, and I cannot echo that enough. He's a perfectionist. And his crew, whether they are that way instinctually, naturally, or if it is a culture that he has set, they certainly reflect it. And listen, when you are spending the sort of money that is an investment in the value and just the overall usage of your home for you and your family, you want it done right. You want it done by people who care about the quality as much as you do, and that is what you get with Daniel Hunter and his crew, Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. Whether it's the hardscaping, landscaping, drainage, solving issues, or lighting, and anything else in between, maintenance as well is something. You can see all of the services they provide on their site, hunterhardscapes.com, also under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. We're going to chat with Mike Moon, his thoughts on the amendments on the ballot tomorrow, sample ballots, sponsored by Brad Pistole, host of Safe Money Radio at KSGF.com. But I do want to go ahead and get to news, and then we'll hit weather and traffic real quick, and then just have a couple of other commercials. That way we can get more of Mike Moon on the other side, as they say. Here's the latest news.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 89. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 68. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 93 and heat index values as high as 96. And for Wednesday, sunny with a high near 94.
State Senator Mike Moon, everyone's favorite. Well, not everyone's. Chicken lovers.
My goodness, good morning.
I don't know why I
Good
can.
morning, Nick and Sarah.
Yeah, good morning to you. I don't know why I just can't ever let go of you and the chickens. It wasn't because of you. It was just the reaction that from
my
people
claim
on the
to
left.
fame, I guess.
Yes. Hey, somebody. I kind of know the answer to this, but I thought it's a really good question. Someone had texted in saying, why do all the amendments have the same numbers? If our Constitution is 5,000 pages, shouldn't we be on Amendment 732 or something? I think what they're referencing is when it comes to vote, like it's Amendment 1, Amendment 2, Amendment 3. And so that they're thinking of that numbering, I suppose, as the number that would be applied if it's adopted. But that's just the number it is on the ballot, correct?
That's correct. And I filed a bill this year that wasn't taken up for a hearing that would not allow the same amendment to have the same, or a different amendment to have the same number as a previous amendment, like Amendment 3. We've got this coming up this year was the same as in 2024 for a period of a number of years. So because it's confusing when they have the same numbers back to back, are we voting on the same thing?
Well, actually, I don't think it would be a bad idea just to have it be the number that would reflect where it would fall on the Constitution itself.
Yeah, that'd probably be a good idea, too.
Yeah.
And that wasn't my idea, by the way. It was Paul Hamby. He's a smart guy. And so I took up his idea and filed it. Maybe we'll get some hearings on that in the future.
Well, I really appreciate you being with us this morning because we have obviously had a lot of conversations about Amendment 4 and Amendment 5 really being one that people are a little more concerned about because it involves taxes which affect all of us. And the vast majority of information we've had on have come from like Bishop Davidson and Darren Chappell, largely because people had so many questions about it and they were involved in their different capacities of putting it together. So they kind of knew the answers to those questions. But that being said, with all of the rhetoric that's out there and you always get some misinformation. Sometimes it's honest misinformation. It's good to have someone on like you who doesn't necessarily see it the same way that they do, but you are an intellectual, constitutionally minded, intelligent person, and I just kind of like this, and it may sound Pollyannish because golly gee whiz, this is the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to have reasonable conversations about things that you disagree with, and I think if there's a silver lining in all of this and the disagreement, which isn't fun, I think conservatives and Republicans would much prefer everybody be on the same page, but I think that it says something about the character of people who are able to have the same goals in mind, have different ideas about the approach, and be able to talk about those. And I noted, the founders of this country had these problems, and so if it's good enough for them, I say it's good enough for us. So all that being said, start wherever you'd like when it comes to these amendments.
Okay, and let me say too, I'm grateful for all the flattery, but be careful.
You've earned it.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm grateful nonetheless. But if you keep on going, I'm not going to be able to fit through the doorway. So, but I am grateful to you, and I enjoyed listening to Dr. John this morning. He's well spoken. We agree on a lot, and I like him. He's a good man, and that leads me into something though that really perplexes me over this past several months at least, where people have told me, because of the positions that I've taken, not just on these amendments, but probably for the last 14 years, that I'm standing with the Democrats. And if anyone's paid attention to my votes during the past 14 years, they likely have been in large part with the Democrat Party. So does that mean that I align with the Democrats? No, it really doesn't. And I know you and Tom have spoken about this a lot, and Dr. John Lee too, when he was on the show regularly. However, many of my Republicans friends and colleagues don't agree with my understanding of the Constitution. And so we have a wide chasm sometimes of the way we vote.
Well,
what is unfortunate... Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say also, and Yeah, okay, so maybe you and virtually any Republican, I imagine, at some point will find themselves in agreement with Democrats, but it doesn't even mean that, one, it's for the same reasons or that it's for the right reasons. Sometimes Democrats are against things just because the Republican establishment is against it as well, and then there are the conservatives that are for the thing that so Democrats may be opposed to it for the wrong reasons, but that to me, it's just, I don't know. I don't like, I think that there can be an interest in trying to figure out where people are coming from and like, well, why do Democrats oppose this? But to simply lump and say, well, you're voting the same way that they are. I think a valuable question is, well, why are they voting the way why do they support this or not support it? Because I find most people don't know.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, I've got stories that I could tell. I'm not going to go into detail today for the sake of time. But you're right. If we would dig deep into finding why the votes were cast the way they are, perhaps we'd have a better understanding, and maybe that would change some minds too.
Yeah.
What's unfortunate, though, is that I'm a friend of many of these who are on the opposite sides of the amendments than me. And even more so is the fact that some, on both sides really, have resorted to name calling. And it's happened to some that I really think a lot of, and not so much with the others, perhaps. But some have even gone as far as to say that people like me are socialists and doing the work of Satan. And I'm serious. This is really bizarre. Just wait though until we begin the big push against Amendment 3. The vitriol will likely be fierce, and that's unfortunate because I think there's some good arguments on both sides. And so maybe someday we'll come together, and I hope that when all this is over tomorrow, next day, that we'll be able to come back together and kind of like Sam and Ralph on Looney Tunes. They can march back down after they've clocked out, and injured as they are, they'll be friends still.
Right.
Now with that, let's get to Amendment 1. Dr. John and I agree on that one. One thing that hasn't been brought out, at least to my knowledge, very much, is that 0.1% raises about $140 million annually. Half of that, $70 million, is paid to private landowners. And I can bet you that not many people knew that, and especially when our own state constitution in Article 3, Section 38A prohibits taking tax money and giving it to private entities. So that should be the major reason to vote no. And are the parks going to close? No, because they're under the DNR, and DNR is quite flush with money. So they're not going to be harmed at all with a no vote. So I agree, no on that. Now, Amendment 2, Dr. John and I agree there too. We probably wouldn't have had the debacle we had during COVID with all these spikes in assessments in Jackson County had this person been accountable to the voters. But nonetheless, here we are, and I think a yes vote on that one is the right one to go. Now, with Amendment 4, Dr. John and I are probably going to part ways here a little bit. Now, we agree on the concurrent majority ratification. He and I were advocating for that for a long, long time. Now, some will argue that we sort of have a concurrent majority ratification with the current proposal, where it's required to have the majority of 8 of congressional districts, but it's not really a good view of the whole state, because Dr. John may have pointed this out, that the first district, which is predominantly St. Louis, can kill any initiative there. And so that's one major problem I have with it. Now, there were some points made about reversing some of the things in the past, and that's not likely either. Even with this one, it's going to make it more difficult, I believe. One of the things that really is troublesome to me, though, I wish that you all could have been a fly on the wall in some of the conversations we had in the legislature with regard to the different criteria. For example, currently, And for constitutional amendments, it requires a 50% plus one vote to ratify, or you can kill the motion as well. So the legislature, in our loftiness, and I think it's sort of haughty of us to believe that this is the way it should be, that there should be kind of two tiers, where for constitutional amendments, the legislature will retain the 50% plus one majority to ratify, but the residents of Missouri will have to get a majority of all 8 congressional districts. And that's going to be extremely difficult. Now, would it have killed some of these other amendments? Yeah, probably would have. And that would have been good. But I think that we're very close to violating Article 1, Section 2 of the Missouri Constitution, which requires equal application of the law. And so if that's true, I haven't heard many people arguing that point. But could it be brought up and challenged in court? Perhaps. And one of the reasons that the legislature gives for having that lower standard is that we vet issues more thoroughly. And I laugh because I've been there and I can see what we do in the Senate and I've seen what we do in the House with the hearings, and sometimes we hear 6 bills in an hour. There's no way in the world you can flash out every detail in that short amount of time.
Is that we'll call it double standard, that is part of the Fourth Amendment? Is that the primary sticking point for you, or would you still, do you think, be opposed to it if that weren't the problematic component?
Yeah, that's a major one, but it comes down to the fact that we can allow one congressional district, and that's St. Louis. They're going to be most every, if you want to say conservative, whatever in the world that means,
You're right.
initiative that we put up there, it's going to be difficult to pass.
Well, let me ask, because that there's total 100% reality to that, without question. What do you think about, because I think it was last night this struck me, the flip side of it, as arguably it is the way that it is now, that as opposed to a situation where, let's say, St. Louis can ultimately torpedo or could torpedo anything, that now arguably they are able to, over everybody else, put something on the Constitution.
And that is true. Yeah, that is the truth. And so, you know, there are good arguments on both sides. Yeah. I think that I would rather have, and I believe we've talked about this on your program in the past, where the concurrent majority ratification method that I'm more favorable of is what they do in the House of Representatives, where 163 districts. To pass a bill there, you have to have at least a simple majority of 82 votes to pass. And they're really more of a representative picture of the whole state. And so you can't have the 16 political entities, districts that have passed things in the past, like the marijuana and the gambling and all that things. You have the St. Louis and Kansas City, Boone County, and Springfield kind of running the show because of their population centers. And so I think that's more of a representation with the concurrent majority. Now, can we get that passed? Well, it's been a struggle for sure. But should we say, well, because we can't get what may be a better option, we go for something that's just going to kill everything? I don't know that that's in the best interest of the state long term.
Now, I've sort of facetiously argued with Tom Arts, and I don't know, this might resonate with you as well. Does it really matter, given how little attention is paid to the Constitution ultimately anyhow? Like, we're fretting so drastically over the way that we alter a Constitution that I think many of us recognize as being considered largely irrelevant to lawmakers and judges anyhow. So, again, somewhat facetiously, but there is some truth to that.
Yeah, and I had my notes for Amendment 5 about, protecting a certain class or classes of individuals. and the argument that those protections shouldn't be in the Constitution, well, I tend to agree with that. But to your point, when did following the Constitution ever stop a legislator
Right, exactly.
from doing what they want to do anyway?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you make a great point.
State Senator Mike Moon with us. Okay, we got to take a break, and then we've got a traffic update in the middle of it, some weather, and then we'll continue on. So I think it's fair to say you're against Amendment 4, and then I don't know if there'll be anything else on that, but we will also get thoughts with Mike Moon on Amendment 5 coming up. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 89. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 68. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 93, heat index values as high as 96. And for Wednesday, sunny with a high near 94. And Springfield Livestock Marketing Center, they will host 2 sales out there this week. Today, they will host their weekly cow and bull sale starting at 10 a.m. And then on Wednesday, they'll have their weekly feeder sale at 9 a.m. Now, if you can't make it out, but you still want to attend, you can always do that virtually. They do offer online bidding and live streaming, so just make sure to pre-register so you're all ready to go before the sale. And if you do have any questions, they also have field reps across the listening area, and they can answer anything from marketing information, and they can even help out with hauling. To check out other upcoming sales or to find a field rep, check out their website, springfieldlivestock.com. And of course, you can find all of the contact information for Springfield Livestock under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at KSGF.com.
Mike Boone with us. We're talking Amendment 4 and Amendment 5 quickly. Someone had texted in asking if we do pass Amendment 4, can the legislature pass a resolution in a future session backing it down to a concurrent majority of 3/4 of a political subdivision for a citizen-led IP change to the state constitution and send it back to the voters?
Absolutely. Yeah, any change can be proposed. The real question is, can it be ratified and supported by the voters? So, yeah, that's a possibility. Another point, and probably my final one on Amendment 4, is that there have been about 130 or so amendments to the Constitution made over the years, and 30 or so by initiative, petition. And here's a prime example, I think, that tells us that we shouldn't be really messing with what the residents or the citizens put up, because back in the 80s, we had an amendment we called the Hancock Amendment. Now, here's the real rub of that. Mel Hancock gave the Missouri General Assembly a chance to propose his idea to protect Missourians from tax increases without voter approval, and they rejected it. So he went through the process of getting the signatures, funding the initiative across the state, and got it passed. And so that's a really great reason why I think we shouldn't be having the two standards there. Now, think of it this way too, Nick. If Amendment 3 passes and we change Amendment 4 to change the standard on how we can do initiatives, it's highly unlikely that we'll get abortion out of the Constitution, because we're simply just changing unfettered abortion for another selective abortion. And so that's something that really weighs heavily on my mind too, and probably the biggest reason that I'm a no on 4.
Amendment 5. Have at it.
Yes, sir. All righty. Well, Amendment 5 is one that I want to read the ballot question to the listeners. Here's what it says. Shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to phase out the individual income tax based on revenue growth, reduce personal property and other local taxes when local revenues increase, modify the sales and use tax to eliminate income tax and reduce local taxes, and protect local funding for public schools and other purposes? And most people, including me, will say, heck yeah, until you really read and understand the fine print. Missouri's Amendment 5 was drafted to create a pathway to eliminate individual income tax. And I think we want the income tax to go away. One of the things, though, that I really am troubled by is the revenue neutral aspect. When you think of people talk about this in one of their primary arguments. If you don't pay income tax, then you have all the money to spend whichever way you wish. And I think that's a great thing. And they say that way you can limit how the government is funded. Well, not necessarily. Now, Dr. John mentioned the fair tax, and I filed the fair tax several times as well. Back when Ed Emery was a senator and I was in the House, we both filed it, didn't get very far there. I filed it in the Senate. as well as Darren Chappell has filed it too. And the one proponent there, or caveat in that says that there is a prebate, which I agree with. There's also some problems with that too, because you're growing government in a sense and giving them the responsibility to give everybody the money back on their essential purchases. So that is sort of a protection. And I argued that with Senator Trent in the Senate, and of course he said that didn't belong in the Constitution, which we talked about that before the last segment ended, where we put things in the Constitution that don't belong there anyway, but it didn't seem to matter for the most part when you're passing bills, especially. But with the revenue neutrality, the government is guaranteed to get the same money they're getting today. And we could all agree, I think most of us would agree, that they're getting more than they need. And so why have we not really focused on cutting spending before we talk about putting all these other things in place? Because the Missouri legislature can reduce and eliminate taxes all we want to. And I know you have to be careful. You can't just cut off your nose to spite your face. There are things that we are mandated to fund. Yep, we need to do that. But we're getting into a place now where we're giving the legislature 5 years to work out the details. And I say this sort of tongue-in-cheek, but there is a lot of truth to this where I'm one of them, and I don't trust us. So where is it going to end? There was something I pulled up. Dr. John had a lot of good stats, and I looked up to see where, this is from the Tax Foundation, and there's an estimate of total tax paid and the tax burden on the residents of the varying states. And so Missouri, we currently have an income tax. So I'm put that in a category here where we're paying, let's see, was about $5,000. Let me get to that segment here, per capita. And here it is $5,156 is our average, and this includes all the taxes: sales tax, property taxes, income tax, and that sort of thing. Now let's take some of the ones that don't pay income tax. Alaska, of course, is one of the small ones. They're about $2,900 a resident. Florida, right in our ballpark, $5,400. We're 51, they're 54. And I should point out, they're relying heavily on tourism. And of course, we promote tourism in Missouri, but we're not going to have near the tourists that Florida has. Texas is right about even with Florida, about 5,400. Tennessee is a little bit lower than us, 4,700. And so if you're trying to say that we're going to save taxpayers a lot more money, well, it depends on their spending habits partly. But if you compare apples to apples with other states, those with income tax currently and those without, we're on par with that. I'm looking at some of the ones that, let's look at Arkansas. They pay on average $5,000. Iowa, just above us, pays $6,375. Illinois, of course, we know how liberal they are. They're at $8,100. So we should be getting some of those anyway, coming across the border in St. Louis to purchase things. And Kansas pays $6,000. So, I think we're still in pretty good stead. And I don't have those figures that Dr. John was talking about with the GDP per state, but he makes good arguments. But I think this comparison also puts it into a different perspective as well. So I'm hopeful that there will be good sense used when we go to the ballot tomorrow, and folks will consider we're not really in that bad a shape. Now, would I like to get rid of the personal income tax? Absolutely. One of the things that we should get rid of for sure is the corporate income tax. And if I have just a minute before the next break, I'd like to tell you what happened back it's been about 6 years ago when I was still in the House. I was working on a proposal that would eliminate the income tax. Back then it was 6.25%, if I'm not mistaken. and the annual revenue just from the corporate income tax was about $350-something million. And that's not a lot of money. But as mentioned before, the corporations aren't paying that. They're putting that the cost of goods and doing business. So we're paying it as consumers. We were able to get that down into the fours, and the first year that $350 million went up to $700 million. Can you imagine that? It's like give more money back to those who are doing good things, and they're going to reinvest it, paying people more, buying new products and raw materials and making new things for sale. The next year, it went up slightly higher. This past year, if I'm not mistaken, it was like $1.2 billion. So the state gives people more money, and they use it to invest. Now, they could save it, and some people say that the business owners are going to be greedy and keep it for themselves. Well, so what? It's their money. But my point is, if we would eliminate that income tax for corporations, the economy would be boosted even more. And it would take some of the burden off of taxpayers, because that's the truly embedded tax. It's not the income tax that corporate owners are paying, but it's the corporate income tax. That's the embedded one. I can see where that makes sense.
Got State Senator Mike Moon with us. We're going to take another break, and then just any final thoughts from you. Again, want to appreciate or thank you for being with us this morning talking about this stuff. And yeah, if you can just hold on a couple minutes, we'll get final thoughts from State Senator Mike Moon.
You betcha.
Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company spoke with Josh on Friday, and the supply shortage, it's still a problem, but it's slowly getting a little better. But another thing they're currently experiencing is that things are now getting missed and not covered because those things are getting missed during the adjuster meeting. That is why it's so very important to have a contractor with you that knows exactly what to look for when it comes to storm damage. And that's where the Pyramid team comes into play. They work with you through that insurance process, and they also make it a priority to be there during the adjuster meeting to make sure that everything gets covered. If it is time to have the Pyramid team out to your home, reach out to Josh today. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Final thoughts, State Senator Mike Moon this morning.
Well, Nick, before I run out of time, I want to make sure that I want to tell you and Sarah how grateful I am to you both for allowing me to be on and share my thoughts today, and many times over the years. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate you always willing to do so. I mean, like I said, I like the fact that we are able to bring people on that have differing perspectives on this, but can have respectful, intellectually diverse perspectives and have those conversations. So thank you for that.
You bet, and you're welcome. Now, a couple more things on the Amendment 5. Does the amendment, a lot of people are asking, repeal the Hancock Amendment? And no, it doesn't. It does, though, create some exceptions and allows modification to, for example, on some of the taxes when they're raised, do not have to go back to the voters for a 5-year period. So most of Article 10 remains unchanged. But I think voters need to really be clear that it's not taking away the Hancock Amendment, but it does allow some changes where over that 5 years, the legislature can make increases to certain areas without voter approval. Now, here's something else that really drives me batty. Governor Kehoe has already come out and said, look, we want to have some exceptions to this. We're not going to tax real estate, for example. We're not going to tax agriculture and products and sales. We're not going to tax Medicare, or medical care, I should say. Well, look at the Missouri Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, that requires the equal application of the law. Is that something that can be done lawfully? I say no. Now, are there going to be problems if you tax those? Yeah, could be. But at the same time, we've got to follow the law when we're doing these things. Also, which services will be included? If you hire somebody to mow your yard, prepare your taxes, get your hair cut, you name it. Whatever it might be, those we're not paying taxes on now. And a big one is auto repair. I mean, most of us drive cars, and most of us get our cars fixed by someone else often, and that's going to be a major expense. So are we going to exclude that one? I don't know. I just think that there are some serious questions we need to ask ourselves before we pass a measure like this, because there are so many unknowns.
State Senator Mike Moon, thank you. It's always a tremendous pleasure. Appreciate your time this morning.
You're welcome, Nick.
All right, have a wonderful rest of your day. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed.